Hello, boys and girls. It's Bonisile here, back with today's FootyNotes. I am going to be responding to a few things that took place today. Just watched the Real Madrid Real Oviedo game. There is such a thing in football as the big boy whistle, right? Not that Real Oviedo didn't deserve to lose this game, but I'm sure they'll be gutted with how they conceded that second goal because it was 1-0 going into the last 10 minutes or so of the game. They were playing at home against one of the big boys. They would have probably hoped for better officiating, and I'm sure if it was the other way around, that one of the Real Oviedo players tackled a Real Madrid midfielder the way Chouameni tackled Don Denker, Leon, I don't know how to say his name. Den Donker, I think is his name, the Belgian kid who used to play for Aston Villa and Wolves in England. Leander Den Donker, I think that's his name, yeah. And yeah, he was clearly fouled. The goal should not have stood, but Real Madrid are Real Madrid, and the big boys get the rub of the green with most of these decisions. And it's still early to make big remarks around Xabi Alonso's impact at Madrid. But what I will say is it looks like a slow burn in these early weeks, and maybe they're going to hit stride come November, December, and they'll be flowing in the second half of the season. I'm going to reserve my strong opinions, as I tend to do on these things. But yeah, they look like they they're still learning a lot about how to do what he wants them to do. I know that he can make a team follow directions and play to his style because we saw what Alonso did with Bayer Leverkusen. That was his first coaching job, but he made them punch above their weight very successfully. And so, when a guy has done that over a season and a half, close to 2 seasons at a club like Bayer Leverkusen, he deserves a bit of break. So he will probably get his time in Spain because Madrid really did want him, and I don't think there's anyone out there who will go take that job who would do better than him based on recent evidence. So I think it's a perfect fit for the club and the coach. And that squad does need a strong guy who's going to shake things up a bit. And so he did that today, made some changes after they struggled last week in their opening match and with a narrow 1-0 win over Osasuna. There were about 4 or so changes. We saw Rodrigo come into the lineup. That was the biggest surprise, I think. But Real Madrid, they'll be fine. They have a lot more talent than anybody else in that league, maybe with the exception of Barcelona. So we'll see how that goes. But in Spain, Barca 3-2 winners yesterday in an away game. They did not. Yeah, Barca are always gonna let go, I guess. As they play for what's his face, the German dude, Hansi Flick. They play very vertical, loose game, which is un-Barca-like. They play more like a Madrid team, actually, in that, like, they up, down, up, down. Barca teams tend to play a little bit more like what I'm seeing Xabi Alonso do with Real Madrid in the first few months or so of him being there. If you go back to the Club World Cup as well, they're very slow, very methodical, and Barca seems to be playing more what I'm used to from like a Madrid team under Mourinho, like besides the defending team, because Mourinho used to be good at defending, Ancelotti too. But offensively, Barca tend to get from back to front a lot quicker than I've seen Barca teams in the past too. But jumping over the pond to England, Manchester United were held to, I don't know if they were held actually, because Fulham did as good as United did, did in that game. And Fulham would probably feel aggrieved with some of the decisions that were made there. Again, talking about big boy whistle. Manchester United were given a penalty in a very weird circumstance. Mason Mount runs into Kelvin Bussey. He runs into Kelvin Bussey and kind of tries to get physical with him, like a lot of these guys do now in corner situations. They try to wrestle each other out the way or be a block for a teammate to come in and head the ball. Bussey just shoves him onto the ground, maybe a little bit stronger than it looks, but I think the angle, the VAR only showed the referee didn't help the referee. I think he should have showed the referee more than one clip. I don't know why the VAR decided to get involved to begin with, but as it always is the case in England, the referees try to be, I don't even know if they're trying, they tend to be part of the story for a lot of these games. And the VAR intervenes. The VAR doesn't intervene though in the goal Manchester United scored. So luckily, they give the penalty, but luckily for Fulham, Bruno Fernandes decides to save football from the PGMOL. He's like, nope, referee, I'm not letting you ruin this game. We're going to win it the right way. And Bruno just kicked it onto the parking lot, way over the bar. And the game remained 0-0. But in the goal that Manchester United score, Calvin Bussey, who had been penalized to give the penalty against Fulham in favor of Manchester United that Bruno Fernandes missed, is the player who gets pushed by Lenny Yoro. And then Lenny Yoro has the room to be able to head the ball. The header's going wide, but he heads the ball onto Rodrigo Muniz. He heads it into the back of Muniz and it deflects into goal. It's an own goal. But if you're going to intervene for what Kelvin Bussey did, which to me looked more like both players were trying to get physical with one another. Mason Mount actually runs into Bussey, who was standing his ground, and Bussey then proceeds to get him out the way aggressively, but it's not a friendly game, right? Like you're competing for territory in your box, and Kevin Bussey had every right to get Mason Mount out of his way. Now, maybe it looks a bit ugly because it's a much bigger boy against a smaller boy. There are other things maybe there that I'm not going to say on this video that may be at play in the way sometimes violence is interpreted in the game of football. Referees, fans, in general, we tend to look at things in a particular way, but I'm not going to go down that road. But yeah, like I just found it to be very unfair the way that penalty was given, and then no foul given for Manchester United scoring. Like that goal should not have stood. If that was a penalty, the goal Manchester United scored should not have stood. But the game continues, and as it was the case a lot of times last season, Marco Silva found a solution from the bench. He rung up his changes, brought a couple of his boys. What's his face? The Mexican striker, Raul Jimenez, who hadn't started the game, comes on, and Emil Smith-Rowe comes on. We'll get back to Emil Smith-Rowe, but yeah, like Smith-Rowe and Jimenez were on the bench, and Smith-Rowe has been getting very little minutes, and they've been starting this 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid. I think he's 18, teenage boy, Joshua King. He's not a bad player, but it's fascinating to see Marco Silva on the bench today. He had Robinson, who is one of the better left backs in the division. He was on the bench. Smith-Rowe was on the bench again. Raul Jimenez, and then Harry Wilson tends to be on the bench a lot and comes on to affect games. But Smith Rowe runs from deep in a typical Smith Rowe way. Bruno Fernandes lets him slide through. I don't know where Manchester United will prioritize in terms of like solutions between now and the end of the window. But instead of trying to find a goalkeeper, which looks like they have either agreed something or they're close to agreeing something with some kid from Belgium, from a Belgian team, I think Manchester United should try and find a midfielder. They really need to try and find a midfielder that can play in one of those two number 6 positions. And they need to figure out a rotation space for Bruno Fernandes in one of those front 3 positions. Sit down one of your summer signings, but to play with Fernandes and Casemiro, who does look fitter, by the way. He does look like he's put on some time on maybe his nutrition as well as his fitness. He looks trim. He looks better on the pitch. He moves a bit better than he did last season. But I think Casemiro can't carry Bruno Fernandes. Maybe when he was younger, he could. And in Ugarte, Manuel Ugarte is more of an off-ball player, but then he's not half the footballer Bruno Fernandes is on the ball. So, like, if you could find a player that can give you a little bit of what Bruno Fernandes gives you and a little bit of what Ugarte gives you, then maybe Manchester United have, a much better balance, like with Casemiro and this other player I'm talking about next to him. Without that player, it's going to be a long season, especially when Manchester United are playing away from home on broad pitches. They'll be fine at home because there's going to be a lot of support from the Old Trafford faithful, and they will probably get a favorable whistle, which I saw against Arsenal, for example. They were able to be really physical, not unfairly, but I think they definitely got a shade more favorable whistle than I think they're gonna get when they're playing away in some of these games. And Premier League teams are good. Like you can't go and consistently win games in the Premier League if you can't control what's happening in the middle of the park. That's just the truth of the matter. And I think, yes, they don't have European football, but with those two old dudes in the middle of the park, they can get away with it in some instances, but they're not going to be able to reach the heights they can if they don't get some help in midfield. I know a lot of Manchester United fans might scream at the screen when they see me say this. Between Onana and Bayindir, I think with this better organized United structure, with having had an off season with Amorim, I would give Onana another go until January. I think Onana is better than Bayindir, especially with more organized system. Now with players who are more bought in. I mean, obviously Amorim is fighting for his job and he's gonna do what he needs to do. And if he thinks Bayindir is the player, then that's what he thinks. But I do hope that United can actually have a better season this year, because I think, the Premier League football is better when they're good. I'm kind of tired of laughing at them. I like talking nonsense like every football fan, but Manchester United being better can only be good for the Premier League. Even if they don't win the league or whatever, they can't be, the shit show that we've witnessed over the last several years. I know they've won an FA Cup here and something else there, maybe Carabao or whatever. People will point to those, as Thierry Henry was pointing to. Manchester United has been to this many finals and Arsenal have not. I don't know. I rather not be in finals if I'm going to look like the way United have looked in the last few seasons. But that said, I think there's a lot that they can do to give themselves. They've pretty much bought themselves a new front three, and they have options there. And Mason Mount looks like a player that's going to be good for them. And if they want to, maybe they go 3-5-2 then, with Mount as one of three midfielders. You know, Casemiro, Mount on the left, and another one there with two strikers. Sesko plus one, as Sesko gets fitter. Maybe it's Sesko and one of Belmo or what's his face? Cunha. But that's not a problem. You don't have to fit in all of your players into the first 11. You have 5 opportunities to make substitutions. Do what you need to do. I know Manchester United have a lot of work to do, but I don't know what you Manchester United fans think. But I really, really think, I know Baleba might be far beyond what you can afford. I don't know for sure, but it sounds like Brighton are asking too much for what you guys are prepared to pay. But maybe Lucien Agume from Seville, or go to France, look and see who the next thing is from there. I think you'd be better off going that way than just buying a keeper and hoping that you can get away with a midfield of Fernandes and Casemiro for the majority of the season until January. That's going to be a long, 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 long first half of the season. As far as the other stuff that I observed today, I want to shout out Jack Grealish and David Moyes. I think Everton. I expected Everton to be decent this year because David Moyes and Everton seems to be one of the just most sensible, most making sense things in football. Like David Moyes at Everton, it seems to lead to good things, as we saw in the second half of last season, and obviously in his previous time there, which earned him an opportunity to work at Manchester United. I like that he has now almost like 2 wingers that play like number 10s, in Jack Grealish and Ndiaye. Ndiaye used to play, Ilman Ndiaye used to play on the left last season. Now Grillo is on the left and Ndiaye is on the right. And then you can have your Garners and your other workmen-like players in the middle of the park. And those two on the flanks will do a lot of creating, for Everton, as long as they stay fit. And if they get Tyler Dibbling, that probably helps as well on the right flank or on the left flank. Everton, yeah, they did well. 2-0 win. And yeah, I'm expecting them to be fine, better than fine, probably top half of the league this season, would be my prediction for them. Yep, that's my kind of talking points for today's Footy Notes. I'll be back with another episodes, with more frequently now that I'm finding a bit more space to create and talk about football. And yeah, please be in the comments, share your ideas with me and give me some feedback, be fair. But yeah, give me feedback. And I'm hoping to get better and build a community in this space where we can talk about games respectfully. And even though I'm an Arsenal fan, I love the game, and I like to observe closely and follow all the teams in terms of who's trying to do what and how they are moving, whether they're moving in the right direction or not. So anyway, I'm gonna stop this one here. Thank you for watching. Please share, subscribe, like. Cheers.